The broadcast of the special meeting of the Minneapolis Charter Commission will now begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this live broadcast of the Charter Commission's virtual meeting. This meeting includes the remote participation of members as authorized under Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021 due to the declared local health pandemic. I'm Barry Clegg. I'm the chair of the Charter Commission. I'm calling the meeting to order and will ask the clerk to call the roll to verify a quorum.
Commissioner Abbott.
Present.
Commissioner Cohen.
Here.
Commissioner Garcia. Commissioner Ginder.
Present.
Commissioner Giroux Isaacson.
Here.
Commissioner Kozak.
Here.
Commissioner Lickness.
Here.
Commissioner Metke.
Here.
Commissioner Newborn.
Here.
Commissioner Perry.
Here.
Commissioner Rubenstein.
Here.
Commissioner Sandberg.
Here.
Commissioner Schwarzkopf.
Present.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Garcia.
Here.
Chair Clegg.
Present.
There are 15 members present.
Everyone is here. We have a quorum. We'll now proceed to our agenda, a copy of which was posted for public access to the city's Legislative Information Management System, which is available at lims.minneapolismn.gov. The agenda is before us and is in the chat, I believe. May I please have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion Sandberg.
Is there a second? Second by Schwarzkopf. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Abbott.
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen.
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia.
Aye.
Commissioner Ginder.
Aye.
Commissioner Giroux Isaacson.
Aye.
Commissioner Kozak.
Aye.
Commissioner Lickness.
Aye.
Commissioner Metke.
Aye.
Commissioner Newborn.
Aye.
Commissioner Perry.
Aye.
Commissioner Rubenstein.
Aye.
Commissioner Sandberg.
Aye.
Commissioner Schwarzkopf.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Chair Clegg.
Aye.
There are 15 ayes.
That motion carries, and we have an agenda. Next item is the chair's report, and I have nothing to report that's not on the rest of our agenda. So we'll proceed right to that. The first item of discussion is Commissioner Abbott's proposed substitute to the charter amendment proposed by the council. Commissioner Abbott, I'll call on you.
Yes, I would request or initiate a request that I withdraw the substitute amendment so that it no longer be considered by the commission.
Thank you, Commissioner. I don't think that needs to be voted on since we did not vote to accept it. We will accept your withdrawal. Next is Commissioner Giroux Isaacson's proposed substitute to the council proposed charter amendment. Commissioner Giroux Isaacson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am withdrawing from further consideration my proposed suggested charter amendment related to community safety and violence prevention.
Thank you, Commissioner. That proposed substitute is withdrawn. The next item on the agenda and the final item is a discussion of our proposed charter amendment as a ballot question to be referred to voters at the general election on November 3rd, 2020. And for our listeners, just to explain the difference, the previous two substitutes were substitutes to the amendment proposed by the City Council. This is a proposal for the Charter Commission to put an amendment to the charter on the ballot directly. Commissioner Giroux Isaacson, I'll allow you to proceed and explain your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, pursuant to Minnesota statutes section 410.12 subdivision 1, I move the Charter Commission consider whether to propose an amendment of its own to the city charter related to the required minimum staffing levels in the Minneapolis Police Department, Section 7.3C, to be submitted to the voters as a ballot question at the general election set for November 3rd, 2020.
Would you like to speak to your motion, Commissioner?
Sure. Mr. Chair, thank you. This proposed charter amendment would bring our charter back to the pre-1961 charter, where the police minimum funding was added. It came from the city council at the time and was supported by the Minneapolis Police Federation. This gives the voters an opportunity to vote yay or nay on maintaining or removing the minimum funding of the police force. If approved, this brings the charter to that pre-1961. The charter is not a place, in my opinion, for deciding how large city departments should be. Keeps a police department as a charter department, keeping policing mandatory. It gives city council its full legislative authority over the police force while maintaining the appropriate operational police force authority under the mayor. Allows for the city council to work with the mayor and the police chief during budget process to reimagine what policing looks like in Minneapolis. The city council can continue to fund public safety programs as they are doing now. The city can continue its plan for a year-long community engagement process regarding creating a new way of policing and public safety. It's a simple, clear, understandable, and straightforward ballot question, and that's why I'm moving this forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So if you can stop scrolling up for a minute, it's section 7.3C funding is deleted under your proposed amendment. That's the 0.0017 employees per resident, but no other provisions of the charter would be changed. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. I don't have control of the screen, so but
sorry.
I do. No problem. But I do see that that's exactly what I'm saying, is just taking out the funding, which does not exist in any other department. And I did some research on other city charters, and it doesn't look like there's a lot of city charters with minimum fundings for any departments. So this would be a budget process between the legislature, which is the city council, and the mayor, who is the executive, going back and forth and negotiating, of course, with the chief of police, making recommendations.
Thank you, Commissioner. As everyone knows, our rules require that before voting to put a proposed amendment on the ballot, we must have a public hearing unless 2/3 of the Charter Commission vote not to have a public hearing. Commissioner Giroux Isaacson, are you also moving that we hold a public hearing on this proposed amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you.
We need a second for that before discussion. Is there a second?
Second, Sandberg.
Second by, I think, Sandberg and Rubenstein. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Commissioner Schwarzkopf.
The question I have is that, does this, because if we pass this, and if it goes back to the council, does it automatically go on the ballot as a charter question? And does the council then write them? Well, no, it's already been. So does it automatically go on the ballot, or can the council still push this aside and put their amendment they had before us on the ballot?
Commissioner Schwarzkopf, and I'll ask City Clerk Casey Carl to add anything if he wishes to, but the Charter Commission has the right under the statute to put amendments on the ballot without approval by the City Council. And this amendment would be independent and separate from the Council's proposed amendment. So if we voted to put this on the ballot, the City Council would have the right to determine the ballot question language, but it would go on the ballot.
And would they be able to put their own amendment on the ballot too?
That depends on what action we take on that proposed amendment. If we vote to accept, propose a substitute, or reject their ballot question, then they could then vote to either put it on the ballot or accept a substitute we propose. If we vote to request our additional time to more thoroughly review the council ballot question, then it would be too late for their ballot question to be on the ballot this fall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other discussion? And I'm looking for hands and not seeing any, so.
Mr. Chair, I have a
Commissioner
question. Thank you. I just want clarification on what we're voting on. Are we voting on, we're not voting on the proposal, but we're voting on whether to have a public hearing about this, right?
That is correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Rubenstein, I see your hand.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think my question was partially answered in that this doesn't preclude the city council from putting their own ballot question on if we accept or we offer a substitute amendment, or even if we don't, it still doesn't preclude them from putting another ballot question on the ballot, I take it. And secondly, since we're not voting on this proposed amendment today, is it open for us to suggest other language in the course of our consideration of this amendment?
With respect to your first question, yes, as I said before, the city council could proceed to put their own amendment on the ballot, assuming we either accept it, propose a substitute, or reject it. The only thing that would preclude that from being on the ballot is if we request our additional time.
Okay.
With respect to your second question, suggested changes in the language would either be appropriate now, before a public hearing, or after a public hearing and before a final vote by the Charter Commission.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Kozak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question that, and it's a bit off topic, but I've listened to the city council hearing last week, almost 2.5 hours, and of course I listened through ours. And it seemed to me that unlike public hearings in other venues, such as legislature, and even what happens in a hearing is they give both sides equal time to talk, and rather than who jumps in and signs up first. And so I would like to know if the hearing rules are already set in stone, or if in fact we can change the format so that we would have at least an expectation that that the hearing we would get roughly the same time for each side to make their case.
The direction that I have given the clerk's office in setting up our public hearing for tomorrow is that first we will take people who signed up for last week's public hearing who did not get a chance to speak. Second, we would take people who sign up for tomorrow's hearing in order but have not spoken before. And third, if anybody spoke last week and wants to speak again, they would be last. That's subject to the approval of the body, and the body may certainly propose different rules. But that's the order I have proposed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions about this proposed motion for a proposed amendment to go to public hearing? Looking at the chat, I don't see anybody else. If there is anybody else that I'm missing, please speak up.
This is Commissioner Newborn. A quick question. Would this be a separate public hearing than the ones that are already scheduled?
Yes, it would. This would be on this proposed amendment standing alone as opposed to the council proposed amendment.
Okay, thank you so much, Chair Clegg. And my second question is, would we still be within the time frame of, I believe it's August 5th, or are we on a different timeline?
I'll ask City Clerk Casey Carl to speak to that.
Mr. Chair, the timeline that I have developed in concert with you would have this proposal also completed by the Charter Commission at its regular meeting on August 5th in order to make the timeline for the submission of ballot questions, which is 74 days prior to the date of the general election. That date, as a reminder, is Friday, August 21st. And in order for us to complete the work as a Charter Commission body and to give the City Council time to finalize and approve ballot language, we would need to have action completed by the regular meeting on August 5th. So it does follow a very similar timeline to the one we are currently following for the amendment proposed by City Council.
Thank you, Mr. Carl. Are there any other questions? Again, I don't see anybody in the chat, but if there is, please speak up.
Sorry, this is Commissioner Newborn again. Chair Clegg, I do have another question, and maybe it's directed towards Commissioner Jerome Isaacson. Do you have any concerns around, and I know this is a what if game, but if this body decides to move forward with our own ballot question and then the council's ballot question is also provided or presented as well, is there any concerns about it being confusing to our voters? And that may get into some language issues, but just wanted to see if anyone has any thoughts about that. But the question is directed towards Commissioner Jerome Isaacson.
Go ahead, Commissioner Jerome Isaacson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Commissioner Newborn, thank you for that question. If both do go to the ballot, there could be some who are confused by the ballot language from the City Council's proposal, but I believe that my proposal here, if this moves forward, is pretty straightforward and clear with just eliminating the minimum funding. So while their question is I believe, confusing, this question is clear and to the point.
Anything further, Commissioner Newborn?
No, thank you so much, Chair Clegg, and also Commissioner Jerome Isaacson. Thank you.
Commissioner Kozak, did you have another question?
Yes, I did, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. The fact is that there could be a conflict if both amendments, as they're now put, end up on the ballot, because you have our Commissioner Isaacson's amendment, I believe, says that the council or the city must have a police force. Whereas the council amendment says may. And the council amendment would still have, if they were to do this in its current form, they still have the .0017 provision where, well, I guess they both eliminate that. I'm sorry, but there could be conflicts in the substance of the two amendments if they were both to pass.
Commissioner Ginder, I believe you had a question.
Thank you. It's kind of a question comment. I'm very intrigued by what has been proposed here. One, it's simple. Two, it kind of goes into the idea of what is appropriately in our charter. But I do have a concern, is that this feels quite rushed to me. If we go forward on this, it'll be less than, I think, 2 weeks from proposal to where we vote on it, with a hearing stuck in between there. It seems to me that it's ripe for confusion with people who want to attend the public hearing and others who just want to understand what's going on. And it also kind of goes against the idea that, we've had time to really consider this. in all of its ramifications. As I said, on its surface, it's a very attractive and simple idea, but I do have some concerns about whether this sends a message that's kind of contrary to what we've done with the City Council's amendment.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Abbott.
Yes, I just want to comment on the overlap with the council proposal. I mean, the question, I think, is what happens if both of them get onto the ballot and both of them pass? And I think the virtue of this particular amendment is that it is consistent with the council proposal if both passed. If the council proposal passes, this ends up being kind of a, there's no longer any language to eliminate from the charter, and this becomes kind of a surplus or meaningless. So I think there are other things that we could potentially talk about in terms of a charter commission initiated amendment, but I think the possibility of conflict between two competing amendments is keeps us from doing anything more than just something a simple deletion of language like this. I think this is well crafted, and I think it's even if both end up on the ballot, I think it would be perfectly fine.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Sandberg.
Hi, thank you. I hope you can hear me. I absolutely agree with some of the comments that this is not a problem in terms of what the City Council has proposed. I see it as a subset of the City Council's proposal. I agree with Commissioner Abbott. If they both pass, then the larger of the two amendments, the council amendments, is the one that will govern what happens, but it includes this. If the council amendment fails and only this passes, then there's this small part of the requirement for a certain funding that would pass and be applicable with no change to language for the presence of police force. If both fail, we're right where we are right now. I don't see this as a conflict at all. I think actually it's quite interesting in that it's quite straightforward and in some respects may mirror some of the comments that we've been hearing online and at the hearing. So I'm fine with it.
Thank you. Commissioner Rubenstein.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with most of what Commissioner Sandberg just said. I do not think the fact that it's rushed is a problem because it has already been incorporated in the other amendment and we've been working on it anyway. My concern, though, is that there is a conflict between may and must. And on the other hand, because our comments and the emails and everything else have been so divided, it's giving the city of Minneapolis a choice that they want to have. And so for that reason, I think it's a very good proposal.
Thank you. That's all the comments and questions that I see. Is there anybody else?
Mr. Chair, Schwarzkopf.
Commissioner Schwarzkopf, go ahead.
As a former city coordinator and as still a member of the International City Managers Association, I have been in contact with them about this whole issue of policing and how you do it and how it should be done, things like that. And they have appointed me to a number of different consultants that have been working with different cities about the same kind of issues. I've talked to some of those people, and one of them told me that the city of Minneapolis in either February or March went out for a request for proposals to study the Minneapolis Police Department and to come up with better ways for policing in Minneapolis. I don't know whatever happened on that proposal. I don't know if it was ever implemented. I don't know if it was chosen or not, but somebody anyway has a proposal out there, and it looks like we need to take the time to figure out what is that proposal. Are they going to use those people? What will they say? How will the structure change based upon that? Those are some of the things I'm finding. what I want to do is I wanted to send a memo to all the members of the subcommittee. And I don't know how to do that. Apparently I go through the city clerk and he then sends it on to the members of the subcommittee. Is that the way it's done?
Commissioner, if you send it to me, I will make sure it gets distributed to the work.
Okay, good. I will do that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Cohen.
I would like to make my comment at the time I cast my vote on this matter, and my comment will take less than a minute.
I don't see, well, there is, okay, we'll let Commissioner Perry go first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just briefly say that although we're talking about the motion, the subject of the motion is whether to have a public hearing, people have sort of commented on the actual substance of the proposal. I would say that I also have concerns about the conflict between if both get on the ballot. And I do believe that while the author, I believe the author's intent is a good one, I think this is a bit rushed. And for that, I have concerns. And I think we need to make sure that we doing the proper study and taking into account the implications. For example, what happens if both are on the ballot and both pass? What are the legal implications of that? And those types of questions I think need to be asked and answered. And that may be one of the things that we talk about in the work group, but I think those types of things need to be addressed before I could vote in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kozak, one more comment. Go ahead.
One final one, Mr. Chair. It seems to me that in the real world, Commissioner Isaacson's amendment is certainly a lot narrower and more focused than the council amendment. However, by removing the .0017, even though it may just be in the real world, a symbolic number, and the current complement of the police force is way above that. Nevertheless, if that were to pass, if that were the only thing to pass, it would still be interpreted by many people. The perception would be that we have now voted to essentially allow the police department to be defunded. We don't eliminate it as a charter department, but we have now given the council and the mayor permission to defund the police. And that'll be the perception, and I think that should be a factor in our final decision about whether to put this on the ballot.
Thank you. Commissioner Abbott.
Yeah, just a reminder, the motion pending is whether or not to schedule a public hearing for this, not whether we should adopt this substantively or not. And I think the public ought to have a say on this. It seems to me if we vote a public hearing down, we're killing this amendment before we have a chance to hear public input, I think, which would be a mistake. So that's really all I have to say at this point.
That's a good point, Commissioner, and a reminder as to how we've handled past proposed amendments. Because our rules do require a public hearing, we see if there is support for a public hearing, and if there is, we hold it. And if there is not, the amendment in essence dies at that point because there's not enough interest to move forward to a public hearing. So I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Cohen for his 1 minute of remarks, and then we're going to take a vote on whether or not to hold a public hearing. Commissioner Cohen.
Well, I believe that the Charter Commission has a legal and a moral obligation to uphold the strong Minneapolis police force for the benefit of citizens of the city. I believe these proposals punish the many brave and law-abiding police for the sins of the few, such as the horrible crime against George Floyd. I believe that these proposals will result in more crime more people leaving the city, both black and white people, lower property values, and more taxes. And I'm going to vote against anything that advances this in any way.
Okay, thank you. One more comment by Commissioner Mecci.
I'm going to pass on my comment. Thanks to Commissioner Cohen's comment. I was thinking along the same trains as to the public hearing, so I'm passing on my comment right now.
Very good. I see no further comments or questions. So will the clerk please call the roll? Again, this is not a vote on the proposed amendment. This is a vote as to whether or not we hold a public hearing. If the vote is favorable, we can then talk about timing. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Abbott,
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen,
Nay.
Commissioner Garcia,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginder,
Aye.
Commissioner Giroux Isaacson,
Aye.
Commissioner Kozak,
Aye.
Commissioner Lickness,
Aye.
Commissioner Metke,
Aye.
Commissioner Newborn,
Aye.
Commissioner Perry,
Aye.
Commissioner Rubenstein,
Aye.
Commissioner Sandberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Schwarzkopf,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Chair Clegg.
Aye.
There are 14 ayes and 1 nay.
That matter carries. In terms of scheduling of the proposed public hearing, we have a public hearing tomorrow, as you know, for the council's proposed amendment. We also have a work group meeting tomorrow. We have to give at least 3 days notice of a public hearing, which if we gave the notice tomorrow, the earliest we could hold a public hearing is Friday. I think the timing in Casey's schedule is flexible enough that we could also hold it early next week. Am I correct, Mr. Carl?
Yes, you're correct.
So we could hold it Friday afternoon. Friday is probably not a good time for a public hearing because many people are getting an early start on their weekend. How about next Monday?
Commissioner Clegg, this is Commissioner Mitchie.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I'm in support of moving a public hearing to next week, whatever is convenient for the group. I think it's only responsible of us to be able to give people in the city and neighborhoods as much advance notice as we can. And I think having something on Friday for a new amendment is just way too short of a time period.
I agree. So let's talk next week. What about next Monday? A week from today.
I think that sounds great.
Here, here.
How about 5 o'clock? Mr. Carl, is that doable from your end?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we'll make it work.
Is there a motion to hold the public hearing at 5 o'clock a week from today?
Motion,
So moved,
Sandberg.
Giroux Isaacson.
Abbott,
Moved
second.
and seconded. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Abbott,
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen,
Abstain.
Commissioner Garcia,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginder,
Aye.
Commissioner Giroux Isaacson,
Aye.
Commissioner Kozak,
Aye.
Commissioner Lickness,
Aye.
Commissioner Metke,
Aye.
Commissioner Newborn,
Aye.
Commissioner Perry,
Aye.
Commissioner Rubenstein,
Aye.
Commissioner Sandberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Schwarzkopf,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Chair Clegg.
Aye.
There are 14 ayes and 1 abstaining.
That motion carries. With that, we've concluded all business to come before the commission for this special meeting. So without objection, we stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and we'll hopefully see you all virtually tomorrow at our public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.